What's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today we're talking about 1408, a Stephen King adaptation released back in 2007, starring primarily John Cusack, but it has some other familiar faces in there as well, such as Samuel L. Jackson and Mary McCormack. I saw this one way back in the day and I remember thinking it was decent, but past that I couldn't really remember why, or actually what happened in it. Just that in general it had something to do with a haunted hotel and a skeptic. That's it. So are you awake? Because it's time to talk about this horror thriller film this forenoon. Let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, forenoon. The morning, aka before noon. 1408 is about horror writer and skeptic Mike Enslin, played by John Cusack, who in the past endured a tragic event that has altered his reality. And that's not the only thing that'll alter his reality. When news pops up about a haunted hotel room, Mike does his job and investigates the room only to find himself trapped in something that feels like a prison that almost immediately makes his mind go mad. This is truly an interesting film. Like any movie, there are plenty of positives and negatives to be found here, so let's start with the good. This is a very physically contained film. The entire thing takes place in just this one room, but it feels like a lifetime passes because of just how many things occur there, which is every bit as much of a character as Mike Enslin is. So production design is incredible. The room itself is like a fantasy world where you never know what'll happen next. Also, because it's just John Cusack in this room throughout the entire thing, you know darn well that everything important is placed on Cusack's shoulders. He needs to perform in such a way that's not only believable that he's going crazy, but he also kind of has to make the audience go crazy too, because he is the voice of the audience. Another great thing about the movie is because there really isn't many other characters than him, the film doubles as a character study that dives pretty deep into why he is the way that he is and what things happened in his life prior to the film's events. He may not independently be a great character by any means, but he's at least developed in a way that I can appreciate. All of these things add up to a film that, for the most part, feels rather original. This isn't just a ghost story. It's not just a typical haunting, as you might think it will be when you start the movie. It even has some red herrings in there to make you think that that's exactly what it'll be. And then all the madness starts to happen. And then it turns into much more of a fantasy thriller than downright horror. But it definitely has some creepy moments too. But I did say that it had some bad too, and unfortunately, I think most of that had to do with John Cusack, but some of it had to do with pacing as well. John Cusack is an actor that I like. I just reviewed him in Runaway Jury and I love that film. But I think he's an actor that needs to pick the right types of roles, and I'm unsure about horror. I get that The Room is supposed to make you go crazy, but as soon as he gets in there, I feel like he jumps on the I'm scared out of my mind bandwagon way too quickly. There wasn't much of a transition. I think the first haunted thing that happens is the radio turns on by itself, and it's at this point that he's like, OMG! And nothing really happened yet. Plus, I gotta say it, I do not fully believe Cusack's performance when he's afraid. It's almost like Nicolas Cage in Wicker Man. Not the bees! Not the bees! But in the same breath, when he needs to show emotion about those deeper, hidden feelings that he has, he does portray those things rather well. So it's two sides of the same coin. When it comes down to the pacing, again, same thing, there's not much of a transition. There's just an explosion into insanity. And once that occurs, it's hard to tell when or if it'll ever end. So John Cusack's character doesn't really have obstacles to get through to escape the room. There's only one obstacle: escape or survive. That's it. So like I said, this film has some polar opposites as far as good and bad go. There really are great things about it, and some not so great things as well. So let's take a look at the final score for a second. From an unbiased vantage point, I can really appreciate the work put into the character development and production design going into the film. Both things stand out as great, honestly. Not much more than that, though. So that unbiased score is 70%, and my biased score is slightly lower at 66% because the pacing and John Cusack's performance were both a bit distracting to me. When we average out the two scores, we come to a final score of 68%, 68 out of 100 possible stars, which grants 1408 with a high D letter score, which is lower than I would have traditionally rated it, but overall, the number that floated in my head while I watched it was 7 out of 10, which is what it still reflects. So don't forget to tell me your thoughts on 1408 in the comments down below. As far as the many Stephen King adaptations that exist, where do you place this one? And how do you think John Cusack did in the role? Let me know below, and as for YouTube, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review, which is slated to be 2008's film starring Jackie Chan and Jet Li. It's The Forbidden Kingdom. Now until then, peace out!